We all believe in religious liberty, protecting the rights of Christians, Jews, and everybody else to practice their faith as they see fit. We don't want Kamala Harris telling people of faith how to live their lives. We want people of faith making their communities stronger by living their faith as they see fit. That is the guarantee of the First Amendment. But I think when you talk to our fellow Americans, the two biggest issues confronting our fellow citizens are number one, the economy, and number two, this terrible crisis at the southern border. So let's talk about both of those. And unfortunately, those issues are connected. Because remember, when Kamala Harris came into office, she promised that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policies, and that's exactly what she did. 94 executive orders that did what? They suspended deportations. They stopped Donald Trump's successful Remain in Mexico policy. They stopped the construction of the border wall. Donald Trump built almost 500 miles of border wall, and Kamala Harris stopped construction of it on day one. That is why we have a wide open border. That is why Kamala Harris has been a failure as border czar, and that is why the people of Georgia are going to send a message to Kamala Harris in 10 days. We don't want San Francisco liberal policies. We want to close down borders. So Kamala Harris, you're fired. Go back to California. I was a few weeks ago in Valdosta, Georgia. Of course, a great community in southern Georgia, a community that was hit pretty hard, of course, by Hurricane Helene. So spare a prayer for the people in Valdosta who are still rebuilding. But when I was there, it was actually before the hurricane hit. And I saw something that has stayed with me for a very long time on the campaign trail. I think about it multiple times a day. Because the sheriffs there, they took me into what's called the interdiction room. Now, this is where they collect all of the drugs and the contraband that they've gotten, a lot of it from the Mexican drug cartels. And, you know, Valdosta sits there at the intersection of I-10 and I-75, so it's become a major thoroughfare for the Mexican drug cartels who are bringing illegal guns and illegal drugs into our country. Now, in that interdiction room, I saw something that really shocked me. You've got, bags of marijuana, you've got pills, you've got meth, you've got, refined THC, you've got fentanyl, of course. And then I see something that looks out of place. It's a box of candy, like Nerds Sour Patch candies. And I say to the sheriff, I said, what's going on there? That doesn't look like candy, or that doesn't look like illegal drugs to me. And he says, well, the cartels have figured out that if they disguise that candy, if they disguise that drugs as candy, then they're going to make it easier to get it into our country and to poison our citizens with it. And then, of course, I thought, as the father of a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, that eventually a packet of Nerds or Sour Patch candies is going to end up on an American playground, and an American child is going to open up a packet of candy and pay for it with their lives. This is disgraceful, my friends, and it's going to stop when Donald Trump Because here's the thing, we know that kids make mistakes. All kids make mistakes, especially when they hit those teenage years, and I'm not there yet, but please say a prayer for me, because we're going to be there eventually. But I want my children to grow up in a country, I want your children and your grandchildren to grow up in a country where it's safe enough for children to make those stupid childhood mistakes but not have to pay for them with their lives. I want kids. I want kids to learn from those mistakes. I want kids to get a lecture from their parents, maybe get grounded. I don't want them to die from innocent childhood errors because Kamala Harris refuses to do her job. So in 10 days, to all of the friends that we have in the state of Georgia, if you want American communities to be safe again, we've got to close down that southern border, and the only way to do it is with Now, there are so many issues that flow from that wide open southern border. But think about this. Think about the unbelievable number. I believe it's thousands upon thousands of children who are in Georgia public schools who are the children of illegal aliens. Yep. And look, I don't begrudge those children. I certainly don't begrudge anybody for wanting to come to this country for a better life. But number one, you got to do it the proper way. You got to come through the proper channels. And number two, when you flood our public schools with kids who don't even speak English, what does that do to the education of the children of American citizens? It makes their education worse. What does it do to hospital wait times when you bring in millions upon millions of illegal aliens? We know the answer. Emergency room wait times are up in Georgia. They're up all over the country because we got millions of people who don't have the legal right to be here. And what does it do to housing prices when you've got 25 million illegal aliens who are buying homes, who are living in homes that ought by right go to American citizens? So I'm asked all the time, what is the Donald Trump plan to bring down housing costs? And there's a lot of things that we can do. But number one, and most importantly, is we got to ensure that American homes go to American citizens. And that I think all of us are affected by the problems of Kamala Harris's leadership differently. All of us process this a little bit differently. We've all got different friends and family, but because I'm the first millennial on a major party ticket, I talk to a lot of people in my generation, and a consistent theme that I hear from them is our parents' generation, they were able to afford to buy a home, and our generation is not. And what a terrible failure of leadership that is. How much have the present leaders of this country failed our citizens when young people don't feel like they can afford the American dream of homeownership? My friends, we can do so much better. We have to do so much better. And unless we fire Kamala Harris, we're not going to do so much better. So let's do it better. Into another issue, of course, because we got to, of course, most importantly, we got to make sure that American homes go to American citizens, but we also have to build more houses to begin with. And we're not going to build more homes unless we stop the ridiculous Kamala Harris regulations that have made it harder to build, made it harder to do business, and made it harder to develop energy in the United States of America.
That's right.
So
That's right.
the most important method, the most important way that President Trump is going to lower prices for American citizens, it's very simple. Drill, baby, drill. Think about this. When you make the price of energy more expensive, when you say, for example, make a truck driver pay 45% more for diesel fuel, then the groceries that truck driver is delivering to the grocery store, they get more expensive. When the guy who's delivering lumber to the construction site is paying 40% more for gasoline, then of course all of us are paying more for what that job site is building. We got to get back to common sense energy policies, and I think it's worthwhile to compare and contrast not just the economic record, but also the economic agenda of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Kamala Harris wants us to buy oil and gas from tin pot dictators all over the world. Donald Trump wants us to buy oil and gas from our own people, because we got plenty of it in the United States of America. Kamala Harris wants to raise taxes on American workers and reward companies that ship American jobs overseas. I've never seen a politician in my life, even the politicians who want to raise your taxes, they'll lie about it and say they want to cut your taxes during the campaign. Kamala Harris is going out there bragging about raising taxes by $2,600 per family on Georgia residents. I've never seen anything like it. Now, Donald Trump, of course, not only does he want to cut your taxes, he already did. He cut your taxes when he's and he's going to do it forward. But if Kamala Harris wants to raise your taxes and reward companies that ship jobs overseas, Donald Trump thinks that gets it exactly upside down. When President Trump is back in the office, we're going to cut your taxes and we're going to penalize companies that ship American jobs overseas. Open the border, and Donald Trump already shut down the border, and when he's president in just a couple of months, he's going to shut it down again. Kamala Harris sends a message to illegal aliens all over the world saying, come into our country, because she wants to give them Social Security and Medicare benefits that have been paid for by American citizens. She does. She brags about it. Donald Trump's approach to preserving Social Security and Medicare is to ensure that it goes to the American people who paid into it, not the people who don't have the right to. And while Kamala Harris is rolling out the red carpet for people who have no legal right to be in this country, giving them benefits paid for by American taxpayers, five-star hotel rooms paid for by American taxpayers, you know what Donald Trump's message is to illegal aliens all over the world? Pack your bags, stop coming to this country, and if you are in this country in 4 months, we're sending you back home. Because I honestly feel a little bad for Tim. Trump has good plans. When my running mates were affordable, housing was affordable, and the border was shut down and closed. But Tim Walz has got to talk somehow about how Kamala Harris is going to solve the very problems that she created. And that is a very tough job. Remember, Tim Walz has got to somehow convince the American citizens that Kamala Harris didn't open the border when everybody with a lick of common sense knows that's exactly what she did. Remember when Kamala Harris, she goes to these rallies, and she stands up there and she says, on day one, we're going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting American families. On day one, we're going to secure that southern border. And I think all of us with any common sense are saying, Kamala, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell are you doing? So Tim Walz has got to pretend that somehow Kamala Harris is going to be the candidate of change. That somehow the candidate who has been the sitting vice president for the last 3.5 years is going to be doing something different over the next 4 years that she hasn't already done. Tim Walz has got to convince the American people that the very affordability crisis that exploded under Kamala Harris's leadership is somehow going to get better if we give her a promotion. So I think we ought to spare a prayer for Tim Walz. Because the American people know the truth about Kamala Harris. She's not the candidate of change. Kamala Harris is the candidate of unaffordable groceries. She's the candidate of higher housing prices. Kamala Harris is the candidate of more of the broken leadership of Washington, D.C. And the state of Georgia is going to have nothing to do with it.
That's right.
Tim Walz is because as much as they talk about joy, I think at our events, whether it's President Trump's events or our VP events, look, we are the campaign of joy. You can feel it in the Republican Party. You can feel it for independents and Democrats that support the president, because I think that all of us can feel, one, that we're winning, but most importantly, that we're about to fire Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Especially joyful is because, again, here I am. You maybe didn't expect me to be so bipartisan today. But I said something nice about Tim Walz, so let me say something nice about Kamala Harris. I think that every time she does an interview, we gain about 100,000 votes. We've actually got 3 people running on our ticket because not only does Kamala Harris give us a bunch of votes every time that she gives an interview, but she also copies every single one of our proposals. And I keep thinking to myself, Kamala Harris, if you're so confident in what you want to do, and more importantly, in what you have done for the American people, why do you keep on just copying Donald Trump's policy proposals? Now, we've of course announced a policy of no taxes on tips. Donald Trump is talking about eliminating taxes on overtime workers. I think that's really Donald Trump, of course, talks about securing the border. We got to do that, right? And I think proposals. And I was talking to the president a few weeks ago about this. I said, sir, I actually think I figured it out. She thinks you're going to win and she's auditioning for my job. I'm telling you, she's going to show up in Michigan today with a red MAGA hat and a long red tie. And that is how she's going to run her campaign these final 10 days. Is she's copied Donald Trump on everything else, you might as well copy his style too. Here's the thing is Kamala Harris is betting on us being stupid. She's betting on the American people being too dumb to realize that she's lying to them. But Donald Trump and I, you know what we're betting on? We're betting on the wisdom and the common sense of the American people. Campaign argument is that she is somehow going to fix the problems that she's been creating for the last 3.5 years.
Right.
But she does an interview with The View a couple weeks ago. Did you see this interview with The View? Some of you did. But most of you, this is how I sacrifice as running for the next vice president. I watch Kamala Harris on The View, so most of you don't have to. Now,
thank you.
I recommend it because I think you lose about 20 IQ points every time you do it. In this interview, they asked her, Kamala Harris, are you going to do, would you have done anything different from how Joe Biden did it over the last 4 years? And again, her whole argument is, yes, she's going to be different, but in that moment with a softball interview, Kamala Harris says, nothing comes to mind. Now, in defense of Kamala Harris, maybe that should be the slogan of the whole campaign. Nothing comes to mind. But the thing is, I think that it reveals to the people of Georgia, on a serious note, that she is not the candidate of change. Kamala Harris is the candidate of more of the same. Kamala Harris is the candidate of unaffordable groceries. Kamala Harris is the candidate of higher housing prices. Donald Trump is the candidate of making the American dream affordable again. We got to get it there. Now, I'm going to make one more observation here about Kamala Harris's campaign, and then I'm going to take some questions from reporters. Here's the problem. It's not just that I disagree with Kamala Harris on policy, on substance. It's that Kamala Harris has run this campaign around censorship instead of persuasion. Now, whatever your views are, whether you disagree or agree with me and President Trump on a particular issue, I'm going to make a solid promise to you that we're going to fight for the First Amendment and we're going to fight for your right to speak your mind. And the thing, obviously, the policy is terrible, but then you realize it's not just that Kamala Harris refuses to acknowledge that the border is a disaster, it's that Kamala Harris wants to call her fellow citizens a racist for daring to believe that we ought to have a secure southern border. Well, here's my message to Kamala Harris. Stop censoring your fellow citizens, try to persuade them, and you might actually get somewhere. Because they want their children to go to schools with kids who speak the English language. American citizens that they're bad people because they don't want fentanyl flooding their community. Stop telling the American people they don't deserve to have smaller hospital wait times. Stop telling the American people that they're bad for wanting a secure southern border. You're not a bad person. We're not bad people for wanting security in our own neighborhoods. Kamala Harris is a bad person for doing this to the country.
Hey!
from hopefully some local reporters and then the national folks that we've got.